The soda can was still fizzing when Evelyn Reed vanished from the state fair in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Population 253,000. The last Friday night of summer 1973 arrived with a dry wind and red dust blowing in from the desert, dimming the neon signs along Route 66. At 10:18 p.m., the last ticket seller saw Evelyn, a 19-year-old University of New Mexico student, walking out to the parking lot with a canvas bag over her shoulder and an unfinished cotton candy stick. She said she'd drive her silver Plymouth back to Los Lunas, where her parents were waiting. An hour later, the car was found on the roadside, lights still on, radio playing the tail end of Take Me Home, Country Roads, and the door unlocked. A passing driver recounted that the silhouette of a girl in a green jacket was the last flash of color before the night swallowed the road. What happened in the next 54 minutes would haunt New Mexico for 3 decades. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest cases. Albuquerque, late summer 1973. The city sprawled under a sweltering sky, lit up by the glow of the New Mexico State Fair, the biggest event of the year. Thousands flocked to the fairgrounds, where the sounds of loudspeakers, games, and vendors mixed with the smells of grilled corn, engine grease, and dry desert sand. Amid the bustling crowd, Evelyn Reed, a 19-year-old University of New Mexico student, finished her final shift of the day at a food stall. She took off her apron, folded it neatly, tucked it into her bag, and waved goodbye to her coworkers. Someone teased her about staying for the fireworks show, but Evelyn just smiled, saying she had to get home early for a morning class. She carried a small bag, grabbed a light jacket, the night would turn cold after midnight, and headed to the parking lot. She paused for a moment, looking at the flickering neon lights in the distance, then opened the door of her old Plymouth Satellite and started the engine. A few people saw her taillights fade as she pulled out of the fairgrounds, heading south on Route 66, a road stretching through the semi-desert of dry grass and sandy soil. The road was nearly empty then, dotted with sparse gas stations and leaning billboards. Low hills flanked both sides, silver moonlight spilling unevenly across the pavement, creating a scene both serene and eerie. That night, a hot wind slithered through the desert, kicking up dust that skimmed across the asphalt. Evelyn tuned the radio to local news, adjusted her rearview mirror, and watched the city's faint glow recede behind her. After that, no one saw her again. The next morning, as the sun climbed and a cool breeze drifted from the Sandia Mountains, Evelyn's roommate woke to find her bed untouched, blankets neat, and textbooks open on her desk. She called Evelyn's phone, then friends. Nobody answered. By afternoon, Evelyn's parents drove over 30 miles from Los Lunas to Albuquerque. In her small apartment, everything was in place. Her bag by the door, wallet in a drawer, jacket hung over a chair, shoes under the bed. No signs of a rushed departure, no note. They called hospitals around the city, then gas stations, asking anyone who might have seen their daughter, but no one knew anything. At dusk, the couple returned to the apartment, sitting in silence for hours. When the clock neared 8 p.m., Mr. Reed walked to the phone and dialed the Albuquerque Police Department. His voice was hoarse, curt. "My daughter, she's gone." The report reached the Albuquerque Police Department switchboard late that evening, as the night shift began. The operator took details from an older man's voice, calm but halting, stating his daughter, Evelyn Reed, hadn't come home in 24 hours, and no one could reach her. The initial file was logged as a missing person under unusual circumstances. Police asked the family to come to the station to provide details. In a small second-floor room, the officer in charge, Lieutenant Roy Halper, listened to Evelyn's parents. On the table was a photo of the girl from her high school graduation, long brown hair, a slight smile. Halper took meticulous notes: last seen, clothing, vehicle, intended route, and a list of close contacts. When asked if Evelyn might have left willingly, her mother shook her head firmly. "She'd never go anywhere without telling us." The first internal report was filed that night, with a preliminary conclusion: missing under unusual circumstances, possible third-party involvement. The next morning, a team of investigators was assigned to the case. They started at Evelyn's apartment near the university. The door showed no signs of tampering, the lock intact. Inside, clothes, papers, and books were orderly. The landline had no outgoing calls after Friday night. In a drawer, police found a notebook listing her fair work schedule and a stamped entry ticket dated September 14th. Everything was photographed and filed. They questioned her roommate, who said Evelyn usually came straight home after shifts and rarely stayed out late. The roommate recalled, "That night she was still smiling, said she'd be back early. I didn't think anything was off." From the apartment, investigators returned to the New Mexico State Fair, where Evelyn had worked. Organizers confirmed she was on the temporary staff list, working afternoon to late-night shifts at a fast food stall. A few people remembered seeing her leave the food area, carrying her bag, heading alone to the parking lot. The lot was at the southern edge of the fairgrounds, where lights were dimmer, and only a few cars remained as the fair wound down. The weather that night was dry, windy, no rain, conditions that could erase evidence quickly. Investigators noted this in their report. Environmental factors may affect scene integrity. Per protocol, police began tracing the route she likely took. Route 66 was the shortest path from Albuquerque to Los Lunas, but had few lights and stretched through empty lots. Patrol units were alerted to look for a silver Plymouth Satellite, license plate 4J9372. By afternoon, a Bernalillo County patrol officer reported spotting a matching car parked on the southbound shoulder of Route 66, about 15 miles from downtown. The car was empty, headlights on, driver's door ajar. The information was verified, and Halper ordered the scene secured until investigators arrived. When officers reached the site, it was dark. Patrol car lights illuminated a barren stretch of fine sand and weeds. The Plymouth sat askew on the road, its front right wheel near a dry ditch. No signs of a crash. The driver's door was slightly open, the interior tidy. No scattered items. The radio played faintly, battery nearly dead. In the glove compartment, they found a wallet, Idaho, driver's license, and some loose change. The back seat held a jacket and a folded fare ticket. The gas tank was half full, keys still in the ignition. Halper circled the car, shining a flashlight on the sand. No blood, no clear footprints, only a second set of tire tracks, larger, deeper, running parallel, about 2 meters away, then fading west. He marked the spot, photographed the scene, and noted possible secondary vehicle track. No trace of Evelyn was found nearby. A search team was ordered to sweep a 2-mile radius. Small items around the car, a beige fabric scrap, a paper coffee cup, and a folded fare ticket were collected and sealed. Back at the station, Halper completed the first report that night. The summary stated, female victim, 19 student, missing under unusual circumstances. Vehicle found on Route 66, no signs of theft or collision. Door unlocked, lights on, radioactive. Initial hypothesis, possible approach or forced removal from vehicle. He closed the file, set it aside, hand resting on the photo the parents had provided. Outside, streetlights cast long shadows on the dusty sidewalk. Inside, the ceiling fan spun slowly, humming in the silence. A new missing person case was opened, and no one in the department knew it would haunt them for nearly 3 decades. The next noon, the Albuquerque Police Department's forensic team was dispatched to the Route 66 site, where Evelyn's Plymouth was found. The scene was cordoned off with yellow tape, desert wind, whipping shimmering dust across the road. Lieutenant Roy Halper stood by a sandy ditch, watching technicians photograph the scene with large-format film cameras. They measured every detail, distance between tire tracks, vehicle orientation, road incline, headlight position, and shadow angles to determine the car's stopping direction. Small numbered wooden markers were placed at key points, each photo logged with time, wind direction, and sun position. The temperature topped 95 degrees Fahrenheit, softening the asphalt, preserving tire marks briefly before heat and wind would distort them. A technician knelt, using tweezers to lift a small beige fabric scrap coated in sand, sealing it in a nylon bag labeled Sample Hash, a 3, near driver door. Nearby, they found faint shoe prints in front of the car, not matching the size of Evelyn's shoes as described by her parents. The prints were deep, with longer strides, suggesting a heavier person. Another tire track, parallel to the victim's car, was larger and deeper, likely from a light truck. The forensic team took close-ups, made plaster casts, and noted the track's westward direction. On the dry ground, they found small debris, a torn fare ticket, a crumpled gas receipt, but no signs of a struggle or resistance. Halper scanned the open terrain stretching into the distance. Before him, Route 66 ran straight like a taut string through the desert, flanked by weeds and broken rocks. This stretch saw little nighttime traffic, mostly trucks between small towns. He ordered the search radius expanded to 5 miles, mobilizing a ground team and a Bernalillo County helicopter unit. A map was spread on a patrol car hood. Teams were divided into 4 directions, north, south, east, west, marking low areas, dry washes, and lots where objects could be hidden. By afternoon, teams fanned out, moving slowly in lines 10 meters apart, eyes scanning the ground. Each unusual item was flagged with a numbered stake. An old Bell helicopter circled above, its pilot sweeping a spotlight over the western sand as the sun cast red hues on the hills. From above, only windswept curves were visible, no clear vehicle tracks. The dry, hot wind blew fine sand like smoke, erasing potential evidence within hours of the car's abandonment. Search teams reported back, negative result, no trace found. By sunset, conditions grew harsher. Sand clung to faces, shirts stuck with sweat and dust. An officer set up a temporary tent by the road, where police lights reflected off the silver car. Halper sat on a folding chair, logging the scene: dry terrain, strong wind, low chance of preserving tracks, no unusual objects within 5 miles. Awaiting forensic sample results. He paused, looking out. The Sandia Mountains faded into the dark, sparse utility poles lining the horizon. The area was silent, save for the helicopter's fading hum. As the last light vanished, the search was temporarily halted. All evidence was bagged, labeled per protocol, and sent to storage. The Plymouth was towed, covered with a sealed tarp. A young officer quietly asked Halper if there was hope of finding the girl. He stared at the empty spot where the car had been, voice rough from the wind. The night closed with patrol cars filing off Route 66, leaving behind a flat, silent expanse of sand where the wind continued to erase every trace made hours earlier. 2 days after the initial search ended, Halper's team shifted focus to gathering statements. They started with those who last saw Evelyn. The initial list included dorm friends, fair co-workers, and close acquaintances. Each interview was recorded on a small tape machine, numbered, and filed with the scene report. At the dorm, 3 classmates said Evelyn was cautious, rarely out late, and not one for post-shift outings. One girl noted, "That night she was cheerful, said she had a test the next day, and was heading home early." No one recalled anything unusual or anyone suspicious. Another student, who worked the fair with her, said Evelyn left the food court around 10:30 p.m., walking alone to the parking lot. She waved, said "see you next weekend," and disappeared into the crowd. The team returned to the fair to verify details. A security guard reported seeing a silver Plymouth leave the lot near midnight, heading south toward Los Lunas. Nothing stood out to him. These statements were classified as routine last-seen statements, useful for establishing a timeline but offering no new leads. That afternoon, Halper summoned Tom Hale, Evelyn's ex-boyfriend. A tall, quiet mechanic at a city garage, Tom said they'd broken up 2 months earlier and hadn't spoken since. She wanted to focus on school. I respected that. Halper pressed, "Did you leave town on the night of the 14th? Tom replied, "No, I worked the late shift until 11. Guys at the shop can confirm." He stayed calm, but his voice cracked when Evelyn's disappearance came up. "She's a good person." doesn't deserve this. After cross-checking, police confirmed Tom's alibi matched the shop's time card and other witnesses, ruling him out. Meanwhile, a new detail emerged. Carl Jennings, a clerk at a small suburban gas station, called the police after reading about the disappearance in the local paper. He said around 10:30 p.m. on September 14th, a girl resembling Evelyn stopped at his station to fuel up. Jennings remembered because the station was quiet that night. She spoke softly, politely. While I was pumping gas, a man approached wearing a light gray uniform with a Pioneer Electric logo on the chest. They talked briefly, and I saw her give an awkward smile. I went back to the counter, and when I came out, both were gone. Halper took detailed notes, pressing Jennings about the man. He described him as in his 30s, tall, broad, short hair, Midwestern accent, driving a gray-green truck with a faded number on the back. Asked about the license plate, Jennings shook his head. Couldn't see clearly, the light was bad. The uniform and truck details caught Halper's attention, matching the larger tire tracks found at the Route 66 scene. That night, Halper contacted Pioneer Electric, a company handling electrical setups for temporary sites, including the state fair. Records showed they had a crew working the night of September 14th, dismantling wiring around the game area. Halper requested a list of all employees present at the fairgrounds from 8 p.m. to midnight. A 2-page list was faxed to the station the next morning, 18 names, including 6 on the night shift, 2 assigned to equipment transport trucks. Investigators combed through each name, checking personal records, addresses, driver's licenses, and registered vehicles. They flagged 3 individuals with vehicles matching the witness's description, all Ford pickup trucks, 1968 to 1970 models, used for electrical work. Halper circled one name, Richard Bowman, 33, technician, previously fined for speeding on Route 66 the prior year. All information was handed to the team, verifying identities. In the investigation room, a whiteboard began filling with arrows, times, and locations, linking the fair to the gas station, then to where Evelyn's car was found. Yet everything remained hypothetical. There was no physical evidence, only vague witness statements from a windy night in an outskirts area where traces could vanish in hours. Still, in the dim yellow light of the late-night office, Lieutenant Halper knew he had his first lead: a name, a truck, and a gray Pioneer Electric uniform. The only thing standing out in a chain of details drifting into the dust of the Albuquerque desert. At the Albuquerque Police Department's forensics lab, samples from the Route 66 scene were analyzed. The lab in the basement glowed with fluorescent lights, the air thick with solvent and Polaroid paper smells. Lieutenant Roy Halper arrived early, holding his scene notes as technicians began reporting preliminary findings. First was the small beige fabric scrap found near Evelyn's car door. Under a microscope, the fabric showed cotton blended with synthetic fibers, twill woven, with a light oil-resistant coating. A technician noted, this is commonly used in technician or utility worker uniforms, like for electric or gas companies, not typical clothing. Halper compared it to a fabric sample from Pioneer Electric. Color, thickness, and stitching matched 90%. He circled a note in the margin, possible match to company-issued uniform. The next piece of evidence silenced the room briefly. In Evelyn's bag, forensics found an unprocessed Polaroid photo, faded by light exposure, but partially restored with a special solution. It revealed a blurry image of a vehicle parked on uneven ground, headlights casting light to the right. At the frame's edge, a man's silhouette leaned, showing only a shoulder and arm, seemingly in a light-colored long-sleeve shirt. The timestamp on the film's border read approximately 10:47 p.m., September 14th, matching when Evelyn left the fair. Halper studied the photo under the light, murmuring, she might have snapped someone just before something happened. The photo was sealed, labeled #P12, and sent to the imaging unit for further optical processing. Meanwhile, the vehicle forensics team reported on the Plymouth's condition. The headlight switch was manually set to on while the engine was fully off. This meant Whoever left the car last deliberately turned on the lights after shutting off the engine. An unusual act for a driver, especially in an emergency. The door showed no signs of tampering, the lock was intact, and the keys remained in the ignition. Fingerprints on the steering wheel and gear shift matched Evelyn's, but a faint print on the outer door handle belonged to someone unidentified. Halper reviewed the vehicle layout, noting technician reports. The gear was in park, the handbrake engaged, the driver's window partially down, as if someone had been talking to a person outside before shutting off the engine. Dust on the window frame showed a large handprint, possibly male, pressed against the outer edge. Inside, the floor mat held a foreign shoe print, square-toed, unlike Evelyn's. The room fell silent as a technician measured it. About size 11 or 12, male, tall. Electrical analysis of the car revealed another anomaly. The dashboard showed power consumption indicating the headlights stayed on for nearly 12 minutes after the engine stopped. Possible only if someone intentionally kept them on before leaving. Combined with the radio running until the battery drained, investigators concluded a second person remained in the car briefly after Evelyn vanished. The first evidence summary, over 20 pages, was completed 3 days later. Halper read each line, jotting red notes in the margins. All signs pointed one way: the scene wasn't where the incident occurred, but was staged. The car's position, lights on, keys in the ignition, radio playing, and door ajar, all gave the impression of a rushed exit, but were too orderly, like a scene arranged to mislead. If she was attacked on the road, Halper said in a meeting, the perpetrator wouldn't bother shutting off the engine and setting things up so neatly. This is someone trying to tell a different story. Young officers around the table listened in silence. On the board, Halper pinned the scene photo next to the blurry Polaroid, drawing a line to the note, uniform fabric. He looked at each officer. We have no body, no direct witnesses, but now we have signs someone wanted to vanish with her, or make it look like she vanished on her own. He paused, voice hoarse from fatigue. This is no longer just a missing person case. The meeting ended, and the room's lights dimmed. On the table, the Polaroid lay under protective glass, the man's faint silhouette beside the car frozen in a mottled glow, a moment captured in the desert night, where all other traces had been swept away by the wind. The Pioneer Electric employee list reached Lieutenant Roy Halper's desk on Monday morning, a week after Evelyn Reed's disappearance. 4 names were underlined in red, those on duty at the fair on September 14th. Howard Fielding, Raymond Cook, Lester Vaughn, and Dale Morris. All were electrical line technicians, scheduled from 5 p.m. to midnight, tasked with dismantling lighting cables in the fair's southern game area. Based on gas station clerk Carl Jennings' report, Halper focused on the Pioneer Electric uniform and gray-green truck. He ordered checks on each person's vehicles, driving records, and departure times from the fair that night. The next morning, police summoned each man to the station. First was Howard Fielding, 34, a line technician with 8 years at Pioneer Electric. He arrived on time, tall, sturdy, short blonde hair, wearing a light blue shirt, voice calm. Asked about his shift, Howard said he worked with the crew dismantling southern cables and left around 10 p.m. I drove the company truck to the Kirtland Depot, dropped off tools, and went straight home to South Valley. I have a gas receipt stamped 10:23 p.m. for verification. Halper noted this, requesting the tech team to check the company's time logs and the truck's temporary location. Next was Raymond Cook, 29, short and gruff. He said he worked with Howard's crew, but left later, around 11:30 p.m. Lester Vaughn and Dale Morris confirmed this. No one recalled seeing Howard after 10 p.m., but they noted he often left early to avoid traffic. Asked about strangers in the parking lot, Raymond shook his head. That night, we were focused on cables, didn't notice anyone else. Investigators verified Howard's statement. Shift records showed he left at 10:05 p.m., with a supervisor's signature. His gas receipt time-stamped 10:23 at a Chevron on Central Avenue, 3 miles from the fair, matched the route to the depot. No witnesses saw him return to the fair. The company truck, a gray-green Ford F-250 with Pioneer electric plates and a faded number on the back, matched the gas station clerk's description. Forensics swept the cab and bed, no blood, hair, or fingerprints linked to Evelyn. The bed was coated with electrical dust, machine oil, and fine sand, typical for a work truck. A few beige fabric fibers from the driver's seat matched the scene sample, but this was inconclusive since all employees wore the same uniform. Halper sat in the meeting room, reviewing the 4 names. He marked Howard Fielding in red, noting, possible match to witness description, tall, but no evidence. The team split up. One group checked the company depot's tool logs from that night. Another contacted Howard's family to confirm his return time. His wife said he got home around 11 p.m., showered, and went to bed. He said he was tired from climbing poles all afternoon. Neighbors confirmed seeing his truck before midnight, the garage light on briefly. The other 3 had similar alibis, verified by coworkers and time logs. Raymond Cook stayed late with the supervisory team, while Lester Vaughn and Dale Morris left in a shared company vehicle. None owned personal vehicles matching the Route 66 tire tracks. Shoe print comparisons yielded no clear leads. The weekend debrief left the room heavy. Halper reread the reports line by line. No direct evidence, no physical traces, witness statements align with company timelines. A young officer whispered, "But it's too coincidental, their truck uniform, location. It all fits." Halper replied, "Coincidences don't convict. We need something undeniable." Still, suspicion lingered. Howard Fielding was too calm, his answers too polished, almost rehearsed. Halper noted privately, possibly aware of the search-prepared statement in advance. Yet the case was stalling. No body, no direct witnesses, no strong evidence. Evelyn Reed's disappearance remained cause unknown. That evening, Halper sat alone in his office, a dim desk lamp casting light on a spread-out map. From the fair to Route 66, red dots formed a cold, straight line. He circled Howard Fielding's name again, then closed the notebook. Though all evidence was circumstantial, his gut told him the man in the Pioneer electric uniform might know more than he admitted. Without proof, Halper could do nothing but add a final report line. Criminal involvement not ruled out, but insufficient grounds for charges. By early 1974, over 4 months since Evelyn vanished, her case file remained open on Halper's desk. Each week, he reviewed statements, maps, and traces, but everything stopped at the same point. No body, no new witnesses, no evidence to expand the investigation. Winter searches along Route 66 resumed when the desert ground hardened. Teams scoured for 2 days with dogs, metal detectors, and helicopter sweeps. They found only scattered trash and animal bones. No sign Evelyn was ever there beyond her abandoned Plymouth. In February, the final investigation report went to the state police. Typed conclusions read, "No evidence of criminal activity. Missing under undetermined circumstances." A handwritten note added, "Case status, unsolved disappearance." The file, numbered #MP73421, was archived in Bernalillo County storage. Halper reviewed the summary before signing. The dry, concise words captured none of the sleepless nights he spent in an empty office. He knew an unsolved stamp would likely bury the case, but there were no other options. All witnesses were questioned, the scene erased by time and desert wind, and the only person with answers, Evelyn, was nowhere to be found. The Reed family rejected the outcome. From Los Lunas, they sent monthly letters to the police, sometimes with Evelyn's photo and trembling notes from her mother. "We believe she was harmed. Please keep looking." Mrs. Reed often called Halper directly, her voice frail but resolute. He responded politely, promising to follow new leads, though he knew the chances grew slimmer. By spring, when the station tallied annual missing persons cases, Evelyn's name sat eighth under pending unsolved. Local media initially ran bold headlines, "Missing on Route 66, with Evelyn's smiling photo beside her Plymouth." But within months, attention shifted to bank robberies, southern floods, and state campaigns. Evelyn Reed faded from front pages, then from Albuquerque's memory. At the station, file hash MP73421 was stored in the third drawer. A thin red label read, "Closed, no further action." New officers knew it as an old case, low evidence. Halper recalled the feeling of filing it away, the thick yellow folder, its spine worn. The metal cabinet's clang sounded final, like something unfinished cut short. Still, for years, he reopened it quarterly, checking for missed details. Each time, he found familiar pages, scene diagrams, the gas station clerk's statement, the 4 technicians list, and the beige fabric report. Nothing new. Scene photos yellowed, edges curled, dust coating their plastic sleeves. In 1975, Halper transferred to General Investigations, no longer directly handling Evelyn's case. His replacement, Lieutenant Harris, reviewed it for days, then noted, "Not feasible to reopen without new physical evidence." That was the last internal mention of the disappearance. For the Reeds, life paused in a void. On Evelyn's birthdays, Miss Reed sat an empty chair at the dinner table, holding a photo of Evelyn in her graduation gown. Mr. Reed, a road worker, drove Route 66 weekly, slowing at the spot where the Plymouth was found, pausing by the dry grass. He told friends he just wanted something. Anything, a belonging, a trace, an answer. But the road stayed silent, the desert swallowing all explanations. By the late 1970s, as Albuquerque rapidly changed, Evelyn's disappearance became a vague tale among older residents. At the station, her file gathered dust, the red label's ink fading. On the cover's corner, typed words blurred. Evelyn Reed, missing since September 14, 1973. An unresolved case left only with a lingering silence between the desert and time. In the early 1980s, the Albuquerque Police Department launched the Archive Review Initiative, a plan to reassess all unsolved missing persons cases from the prior decade. Hundreds of boxes were moved from the old basement storage to a new administrative building on Lomas Boulevard. Among the young officers assigned was Sergeant David Larkin, 32, recently transferred from patrol. His task was to check backlogged files, verify seals, cross-reference evidence codes, and determine which cases needed long-term storage or could be marked archived and inactive. One June morning, while sifting through the missing persons 1970-1975 cabinet, Larkin stumbled upon a file labeled hash MP73421, its yellow cover worn at the edges, the red label faded until only half of Evelyn Reed was legible. He opened it, finding typewritten reports from an old Underwood machine, interspersed with black and white photos and a Polaroid film tucked in a plastic sleeve. The evidence log caught his eye. One unprocessed Polaroid photo, labeled hash P12, recovered from victim's bag. But when cross-referenced with the storage ledger, the code hash P12 didn't match any listed evidence numbers. Other items bore standard seals and 3-digit codes. But this photo's odd numbering didn't align with 1973 protocols. Larkin took the file to the evidence storage room, where metal cabinets lined a dimly lit space. The clerk, Lorraine Cook, checked the old ledger and frowned. No record. They might have temporarily sealed it and forgot to update. She opened a refrigerated drawer for film storage, digging through the back to find a plastic envelope handwritten P12, Polaroid, Reed case. The envelope's edges were dry, its wax seal cracked. Inside, the photo was heavily faded, the film peeling, showing only a blurry streak of light and a vague car shape. Larkin placed it under a magnifying lens, straining to discern details, but the grayed image revealed little of the figure described in old notes. He wrote, "Evidence severely degraded. Image deterioration, 80%. Further checks revealed the beige fabric samples bag was also compromised. Its seal was peeling, the examiner's signature faded, fine sand spilled inside, indicating an unsealed adhesive. Compared to current preservation standards, the entire Reed case evidence lot violated protocol, improper storage temperature, inadequate seals. Larkin reported this to his superior, attaching photos of the condition and recommending a review of evidence custody chain. The report went to Internal Affairs, but the response was slow. The issue was deemed an administrative error from the era, insufficient to reopen the investigation. An internal directive ordered Larkin to document the error, recatalog, and reseal per 1982 standards. He complied, affixing new storage codes, signing and stamping, but unease lingered. The old notes on the Polaroid suggested it was once key evidence, possibly Evelyn's last photo, or of someone who approached her. Digging deeper, Larkin read the full 1973 investigation, Carl Jennings gas station statement, the Pioneer Electric Technician list, and the Plymouth analysis. All ended with insufficient grounds for charges. He flipped to an internal memo by Lieutenant Roy Halper, scene possibly staged. Third-party involvement not ruled out. The typed text slanted, signed with a shaky pen at the page's bottom as if written late at night. Checking personnel records, Larkin learned Halper retired in the late 1970s. No one from the original team remained at the department. He asked older colleagues, but most vaguely recalled the Route 66 student case. One shrugged, "Old story, nothing to it. She just vanished." The curt reply fueled Larkin's curiosity but underscored the thin line between interest and futility. By year's end, Larkin completed the backlog review. Evelyn Reed's case was marked low priority. Archived, reopenable only with new physical evidence. He filed a copy, returned the folder to drawer 14 among 1972, 1975 cases. Before closing the cabinet, he glanced at the worn yellow cover, thinking of the faded Polaroid still unanswered. In his final report, he added a handwritten note, almost a reminder for future readers. Original photo no longer clear, evidence degraded. Signs of initial sealing errors, data loss possible. The report, once filed, prompted no action. No one requested a reinvestigation or asked about the blurry Polaroid. In March 1983, the review program ended and the cabinets were resealed. Inside, file hash MP73421 lay dormant, like Evelyn Reed's story, silent, unresponsive, reduced to faded photos and numbers no one saw. In the early 1990s, New Mexico overhauled its judicial archives, consolidating small county records into a criminal data center in Santa Fe. Albuquerque Police Department's old metal cabinets were sealed, reclassified, and shipped in batches by specialized trucks. Among over 800 unresolved cases was a thin file, pale yellow, coded hash MP73421. Evelyn Reed, missing person, September 1973. It was packed in Box 47, labeled Long-Term Missing Unresolved Evidence, and sent to the state's cold case storage. As clerks scanned the inventory, no one noted the name. It was just one of hundreds of bodiless, suspectless, traceless cases eroded of meaning by time. Santa Fe's cold case storage, a new concrete building south of the city, maintained 60 degrees Fahrenheit to preserve documents. Rows of high shelves held case boxes, organized by year and type. Evelyn Reed's file sat in the M. Burt section, between a Socorro woman and a Gallup teenager's cases. As a clerk relabeled the box, he noticed a handwritten note inside the cover, Polaroid unclear, sealing error. He skimmed a few lines, then closed it, affixing a new label, Cold Case Death 1991, unresolved. The file was shelved on the 6th rack, top tier, beside 1974 boxes. From that moment, Evelyn Reed's case officially shifted from unsolved disappearance to cold case file. In the following years, the state's electronic database gradually replaced paper records, but most old files stayed untouched, undigitized. New investigators barely knew the case. Querying the cold case list, hash MP73421 showed one line. Female 2, Age 19 missing from Route 66, Albuquerque. No recovery. No photos, statements, or evidence descriptions, just empty characters on a screen. The Reeds remained in Los Lunas, their old house now home to two aging parents. In 1993, Mrs. Reed died after a sudden illness. On her nightstand, a small wooden box held unsent letters, all dated differently, all pleading with police to reopen the case. Mr. Reed, now in his 70s, no longer drove to Albuquerque. He still wrote yearly to the state police, receiving brief replies. Case transferred to Cold Case Unit, Santa Fe. By the mid-1990s, Cold Case became a specialized branch in U.S. criminal investigations. True crime TV shows sparked public interest in unsolved cases. In Albuquerque, some local papers ran features on open cases of the 70s, listing Evelyn Reed fourth. The only photo published was from 1971, not the original file. No one held the Polaroid, sealed in Santa Fe's cold storage, inaccessible without an official investigation order. Time passed. Case involved officers retired or died. Lieutenant Roy Halper passed in 1994, his notebook's final line, "Scene possibly staged," unquestioned. Younger officers, when asked, shook their heads. Route 66 has hundreds of cases like that, no starting point. Evelyn's disappearance faded into obscurity, a statistic in state crime logs. By the late 1990s, the new electronic archive system was complete. Entering MP 73-421 showed inactive, no new evidence since 1974. No one reread the paper file on its high shelf. Its pages yellowed, edges frayed, the Polaroid's wax-sealed envelope cracked into fragments. In the 1999 Cold Case Unit's year-end report, Evelyn Reed's case was listed as historical, unresolved, to be revisited only with DNA evidence or special orders. Over 25 years had passed since Evelyn vanished. Her name ceased appearing in meetings or letters from Los Lunas. The student's story dissolved into desert dust, leaving one silent file in Santa Fe's cold storage, where dim yellow lights fell on rows of steel boxes and time buried all untold truths. In early 2000, the Albuquerque Police Department launched the Digital Archive Initiative to digitize unsolved case files from 4 decades prior. Paper files from Santa Fe's cold case storage were gradually transferred to a new Albuquerque data center, where technicians worked in low-light rooms surrounded by high-capacity scanners and modern IBM servers. Among the first batch was a thin file with a faded label, #MP 73-421, Evelyn Reed. Ava Moreno, a 27-year-old technician handling unsolved missing persons, was the first to open that box. She meticulously removed brittle pages, flattened them, and scanned them into the system. Each document received a digital ID and high-resolution backup. Reaching the evidence section, she found a cracked wax-sealed envelope, its yellowed label reading P12 Polaroid, Reed case. The handwritten text, trembling and faint, required tilting under light to read. Per protocol, Ava checked each item before scanning or transferring to cold storage. Wearing gloves, she carefully opened the envelope, revealing a faded, peeling Polaroid. Its back showed a faint timestamp, the 14th of September 73, 22:47. She noted, "Original film unprocessed, possible recovery via infrared scan." To others, the photo might seem worthless, but Ava, experienced in salvaging lost records, added it to the experimental restoration list. In the imaging room, a Minolta-Dimage digital restoration machine hummed to life. Ava placed the Polaroid on the scanner, selecting dual light and infrared modes. As the image emerged, she held her breath. Initially, only blurry light patches appeared. Ground, headlights, a hard object shadow. But with contrast adjustments and noise reduction, details sharpened. A car sat tilted, headlights glaring to one side, and on the frame's right, a figure stood, half turned toward the lens. Ava zoomed in. The angled light obscured the face, but a beige long-sleeve shirt was clear, with a faint circular emblem on the left chest, like a logo. Using micro-point restoration, she enhanced the faded colors. After minutes, the emblem clarified, a pale green circle with a white lightning bolt and tiny text, half-readable, Pioneer Electric. A chill ran down her spine. Ava immediately cross-referenced the 1973 Pioneer Electric employee list in the file's appendix. It matched the company named in Carl Jennings' gas station statement. For nearly 30 years, that detail lay dormant on paper. The photo too faded to confirm. Now, with restoration tech, the logo stood clear. She logged photo pay 12, restored to 63% clarity. Identified male in technician uniform with Pioneer Electric logo near suspected victim's vehicle. Recommend transfer to Identification Analysis Unit. Submitting her report, Ava attached both original and restored images, circling the logo in red, and presented them to the cold case supervisor. Lieutenant Greg Swanson reviewed the screen, pensive. How long since anyone touched this file? Ava replied, per logs, 1983. For resealing only. No investigation since. Swanson nodded, tilting the photo to the light, speaking slowly. This could change how we see the case. One small detail. But if that logo's real, someone at Pioneer Electric knows what happened. Ava's report, coded #RIS 2118, was sent to the state's Image Analysis Unit. The scanned data was stored on the Cold Case Net system, a new federal access database. Leaving the scanning room, hallway lights reflected off glass, casting a cold blue glow on the Polaroid, a frozen man trapped in a 1973 night moment. By day's end, Ava logged her final note, file MP73 421 photo successfully restored, recommend case reinvestigation. She didn't know that brief note would spark events shaking the state police system. All from a faded photo forgotten for nearly 30 years in Santa Fe's cold storage. After completing the photo restoration report, Ava Moreno couldn't shake the image of the man in the Polaroid. The Pioneer Electric logo was too clear to be a mistake. She decided to access old company personnel records herself, though this exceeded her archival technician role. Years of cold case work taught her that waiting for bureaucratic processes could bury a lead for decades. The next morning, she visited the city's civil archives, requesting 1970, 1975 labor records. The data was on brown microfilm rolls, handwritten in blue ink. After nearly half an hour, she found Pioneer Electric's 1973 employee list. Over 40 names appeared, 4 matching the Reed case file: Howard Fielding, Raymond Cook, Lester Vaughn, and Dale Morris. Next to Howard Fielding was a note, resigned October 1973, reason not specified. It stopped her cold. She reopened the digitized case file, checking timelines. Evelyn vanished, September 14, 1973. Fielding resigned 3 weeks later. No reason for leaving, no temporary replacement, and his personnel record ended in October. Ava searched Social Security records. Fielding, born 1936, would be about 64 in 2000. His last updated address, from 1998, was a house in Corrals, north of Albuquerque. Ava noted this carefully, then accessed the 1973 state utility map from the technical archive. The faded blueprint showed the fairgrounds electrical grid running along the southern exhibit edge, connecting to a substation near Route 66. The September 1973 construction plan named the lead Linman, H. Fielding. She leaned back, staring at the faint text, feeling pieces form a circle. Fielding was not only at the fair the night Evelyn vanished, but oversaw the area with the road to the parking lot where her Plymouth left. That afternoon, Ava requested access to public criminal records. Fielding had no convictions but was fined for speeding on Route 66 in 1972. The same road Evelyn frequented. Another traffic note listed him owning a gray-green Ford F-250, registered with Pioneer Electric's commercial plates. The color, model, and logo matched Carl Jennings's description from nearly 30 years ago. She printed the findings, organized them chronologically, and presented them to Lieutenant Greg Swanson. He reviewed each page. Pensive. Fielding. We've seen this name in the original investigation, right? Yes. He was questioned first and cleared with an alibi. A gas receipt. Swanson nodded, flipping to the Polaroid copy. And now, the Pioneer Electric logo is clear, and the man's wearing that uniform. He looked up. You're sure? Ava replied firmly. I ran the image through 3 filters, no mistake. The logo matches Pioneer Electric's 1970-1975 design exactly. Swanson ordered Ava and the tech team to compile an expanded analysis. They reconstructed the 1973 fairgrounds layout using utility maps and archived photos. The southern lights ran from a main pole to the game area, along an internal road to the parking lot. Mapping Evelyn's workplace and the Plymouth's exit route, it aligned with Fielding's assigned cable route that night. If she left around 10:30 p.m., Fielding was likely near the south gate within 15 minutes, matching the gas station clerk's sighting of Evelyn talking to a man in a Pioneer Electric uniform. Ava requested access to Pioneer Electric's personnel records, post 1973. She discovered that Fielding not only left the company shortly after the disappearance, but also moved out of Albuquerque with his family in early 1974. His new address was listed in Gallup, but by 1981, he returned to Corrales, where he registered a small electrical repair business. Tax records showed he operated until the mid-1990s. She compiled a 12-page summary stating Howard Fielding, Pioneer Electric technician, was present at the New Mexico State Fair on the night of September 14, 1973, overseeing the southern cable route where the victim worked. Records note, he left the company 3 weeks later, relocated, and currently resides in Corrales. He owned a vehicle matching the witness description. The report, signed A. Marino, included the restored photo #P12. That night, as the data room's servers hummed steadily, Ava sat alone, staring at the screen, displaying the blurry face in the Polaroid. The square jaw, broad build, and neatly pressed uniform collar all matched Fielding's 1973 profile description. She couldn't be certain, but her instincts screamed it was no coincidence. All evidence, logo, cable route, map, timeline, pointed to one name. The next morning, Swanson approved an internal proposal sent to the state's cold case unit, titled Request for Background Re-Examination, Howard Fielding. A new file, coded CC00147, was opened, linked to Evelyn Reed's disappearance. In the case log, Ava wrote the first line in firm handwriting, after 27 years, the man in the photo has a name. Outside, October sun scorched the data center's concrete walls. In the cool room, silent files awaited reopening, and among hundreds of forgotten cases, Howard Fielding's name became the focal point, marking the moment Evelyn Reed's case emerged from 27 years of silence. In early April 2001, nearly a year after Ava Moreno restored the Polaroid, the Albuquerque Police Department's cold case unit officially resurveyed the old Route 66 site where Evelyn Reed's Plymouth was found almost 30 years prior. The reinvestigation order, signed by the department chief and authorized for a specialized team led by Lieutenant Greg Swanson, included Ava as the digital evidence technician, 2 criminal investigators, a geologist, and a technical team with ground-penetrating radar, GPR. Arriving at dawn, the scene felt eerily unchanged from the 1973 photos. The road remained desolate, with sparse dry grass on sandy patches and rusted utility poles leaning in the distance. Wind carried red dust and the scent of old asphalt, evoking both familiarity and unease. Swanson spread an old map on the car hood, pointing to the vehicle location marker. He said, "We start scanning here 50-meter radius. If anything's buried, GPR will find it." The radar machine moved slowly across the ground, emitting a low hum. Its screen displayed feedback waves, each soil anomaly shown in color gradients. Ava meticulously logged coordinates. cross-referencing the old scene map. After over 2 hours, an unusual signal appeared 20 meters from the car's former spot near a low, wind-eroded mound. Radar showed a small metallic object about 30 centimeters deep. The team dug manually. Dry sand gave way easily, but the lower soil was rock hard. At half a hand's depth, a shovel hit a glinting silver object. A technician used tweezers to retrieve it, a delicate silver necklace, twisted chain, broken clasp, caked in sand and faint rust. Ava, gloved, placed it in a sealed plastic box. Under sunlight, the necklace reflected a cold gleam, as if pulled from 3 decades of slumber. A few steps away, the GPR operator detected a second signal, non-metallic, smaller, slightly deeper. Digging revealed a rolled-up beige fabric scrap, encrusted with dirt. Though decayed, its twill weave matched the 1973 case description. Ava bagged both items separately, noting time and coordinates. Swanson surveyed the area, signaling a pause. He mused, "If this necklace is Evelyn's, this might not just be where the car was left, it could be where it all began." The search expanded to a 100-meter radius. Teams moved in lines, eyes scanning every meter. No other objects surfaced, but enough soil samples were collected for analysis. As dusk gilded the sand, the team stood silent. After years, the first traces emerged, small but weighty. The next day, evidence went to New Mexico's state lab. The necklace was cleaned, photographed, and analyzed via spectroscopy, revealing silver-nickel alloy, common in 1970s. Albuquerque gift shops. The Reed family was called to identify it. Mr. Reed, now in his 70s, stared long before whispering, "Evelyn had one just like this. I bought it for her at a shop on Central Avenue." His statement was logged, confirming the necklace as the victim's. Meanwhile, the beige fabric went to synthetic fiber analysis. Under an electron microscope, its weave, cotton-polyester ratio, and oil-resistant coating matched Pioneer Electric's 1971-1973 uniforms supplied by Consolidated Workwear. The report concluded, material matches the 1972 Pioneer Electric uniform source. This was the second confirmation after the Polaroid, tying Route 66 to Fielding's employer. To check evidence movement, geologists analyzed soil on the fabric and necklace, sent to the University of New Mexico's mineralogy lab. Results showed Corrales-specific soil, silica sand, mica, high iron oxide, distinct from Route 66 calcium carbonate desert soil. This suggested the evidence had contacted the environment near Fielding's home. Swanson, reading the results, went quiet. The scene soil doesn't match the evidence, but it matches the soil around his house. Folding the paper, he told Ava, "This proves the evidence was moved to or from where he lives." She replied softly, "We need to verify on site." 3 days later, the cold case team visited Corrales. Fielding's house stood isolated, backed by a wide, empty lot. A small tin-roofed shed and wooden poles for electrical tools were visible. Without a search warrant, they conducted perimeter observation. A geologist sampled soil at 3 points around the fence. On-site comparisons showed matching color, grain structure, and light reflection with the evidence soil. That evening, in a temporary station meeting room, Swanson pinned new photos to the board: the silver necklace, beige fabric, mineral charts. Red threads connected them to one name, Howard Fielding. He spoke slowly. "We still have no body, but now we have the first physical link between him and the scene." The room was silent, save for the air conditioner's hum. Ava glanced at the restored Polaroid, the uniformed man by the silver car. She whispered, "Maybe now Evelyn's starting to speak." In the month-end report to the state, Swanson wrote, "Route 66 GPR survey uncovered evidence directly linked to victim Evelyn Reed. Analysis confirms matches with 1972 Pioneer Electric uniform material and soil near Howard Fielding's current residence. Request warrant for Corrales search to continue investigation." Outside, Albuquerque's summer brought desert winds, blowing red dust through iron fences. 30 years after Evelyn vanished, Route 66's parched ground finally spoke, a small silver necklace and tattered beige fabric. Enough to revive a case time had buried. In mid-June 2001, after soil and fabric analyses were confirmed, the cold case team shifted to monitoring Howard Fielding. Lieutenant Greg Swanson secured a temporary surveillance warrant from Bernalillo County Court, allowing tracking of movements, public data, and trash collection within legal bounds. A three-person team, including Ava Moreno for evidence analysis, was assigned. Fielding, now 65, lived alone in a small Corrales house north of Albuquerque. His wife had passed, his only son moved to Arizona. Neighbors described him as quiet, rarely social, occasionally fixing local electrical issues before disappearing for days. He still drove an old Ford F-250, peeling paint but retaining its gray-green hue, a faded Pioneer Electric logo on the door like a relic. The surveillance team set up 2 blocks away, using long lenses and car-mounted cameras. For 2 weeks, Fielding's routine was predictable. Early mornings in his yard, afternoons, buying supplies in town, evenings home with lights off by 9. But they noted a pattern. Every weekend, he drove south from Corrales at 5 a.m. along old Route 66, returning after dark. The purpose was unclear. He visited no one, stopped nowhere long, occasionally pulling over to stare at the desert before continuing. On June 24th, Swanson ordered the team to follow. Fielding's truck left Corrales, took Interstate 25, then veered onto old Route 66, near the surveyed site. He stopped at the same empty lot where the necklace and fabric were found. Through lenses, they saw him stand still, hands in pockets, staring at the ground. Ava, in the surveillance van 100 meters away, whispered, "He returns here every week." Swanson replied softly, "No one comes back to a place like this without a reason." After Fielding left, technicians checked the area. No new traces surfaced, but they found warm Marlboro Red cigarette butts, matching those in his trash. All were collected and sealed. The next day, the team legally gathered Fielding's curbside trash. Ava found notable items: a rag with dark red soil, worn canvas gloves, and 2 old plastic bags with fine sand. She sent them to the lab. The results stunned the team. The rag's soil matched Route 66's mineral composition, not Corrales, and the plastic bags contained fine sand with beige fabric fibers, matching 1970s Pioneer Electric uniforms. The report concluded, samples from suspects' trash align with Route 66 scene evidence, likely sharing origin or environment. Swanson held the results, silent for a moment. This wasn't just a past coincidence. Fielding maintained a physical link to the disappearance site. He called the district attorney. "We have matching soil and fabric, a witness description, restored photo, and unusual travel patterns. I want a warrant to search Howard Fielding's home and vehicle." The attorney requested a detailed surveillance report. Ava compiled it: travel frequency, times, behavior at Route 66, and evidence analysis. Her conclusion read, "Suspect maintains weekly visits to the site of prior evidence, soil and vehicle dust match Route 66 samples. Reasonable grounds to suspect direct involvement in the 1973 disappearance." 3 days later, the court approved the warrant. On July 1st, the cold case team, with Bernalillo County Police, prepared close surveillance. As Fielding's truck sat by his garage, they recorded the area, awaiting the right moment. That night, Ava stood by the command room window, watching the camera feed of the old Ford F-250. Scratched paint, red dust on rear tires, an expired insurance sticker on the glass. She whispered, 30 years, and he's still driving that truck. Swanson, eyes fixed on the screen, said, "If we're right, it starts and ends with this truck." The next morning, as Fielding left as usual, technicians conducted a quick dust sample sweep from the truck. Dust from the undercarriage and bed, collected forensically, matched Route 66's minerals and dark fabric fibers identical to Pioneer Electric's uniforms, mirroring the trash samples. Swanson signed the search execution order. In the prep log, he wrote, "Based on matching physical evidence, travel behavior, and historical records, reasonable grounds exist to believe suspect Howard Fielding is directly linked to Evelyn Reed's disappearance. Outside, early summer winds swept Corrales' quiet streets. In the dusk, Fielding's old truck sat silently by the garage, red dust obscuring the faded Pioneer Electric logo, the last trace of a story he thought buried forever under Route 66's sand. On January 15, 2002, Corrales was cold and dry, thin fog draping the sandy fields. At 6:30 a.m., Albuquerque Police Department vehicles entered the quiet neighborhood, stopping at Howard Fielding's isolated house at 417, flanked by bare poplar trees. Lieutenant Greg Swanson held a search warrant, approved by Bernalillo County Court after 6 months of surveillance, signed by Judge Helen McCarthy. It read, "Search of residence, shed, personal vehicle and electronic devices owned by suspect Howard Fielding, 65, related to the disappearance of citizen Evelyn Reed." At 6:45, the task force approached. 2 officers knocked, announcing themselves, no response. Swanson signaled, and the door was safely breached with specialized tools. Inside, the house was still, furnishings unnervingly orderly. Fielding stood in the living room, in a gray sweater, eyes wide, hands slightly trembling but voice calm. "What are you looking for here?" Swanson read the warrant evenly. "We're conducting a court-ordered search. You have the right to remain silent." Fielding nodded slightly and sat. The forensic team spread out. Ava Moreno handled recording, marking, and collecting evidence. The house smelled of machine oil and electrical dust, remnants of a technician's life. In the garage, they found the gray-green Ford F-250, the same truck monitored for a year. Opening the bed revealed thick red dust mixed with glinting sand. An officer sampled it, sealing it as #R01. Inside the house, the bedroom was meticulously arranged, with no women's items, only a locked wooden drawer. After legally breaking it open, they found a small metal box containing a silver necklace, twisted chain, broken clasp, identical to the 1973 sample. Ava, gloved, used tweezers to compare it under a handheld light. The clasp's break matched the archived photo, a detail Mr. Reed had confirmed as his daughter's. Her hands trembled slightly. Swanson glanced over, his eyes heavy. 30 years, and it's still here. On a small backroom desk, the team found an old Route 66 map, its bottom corner worn and folded, marked with red dots along the Albuquerque to Los Lunas stretch. The largest circle was exactly where Evelyn's Plymouth was found. Nearby was a brown leather Pioneer Electric logbook, labeled Maintenance Log, September 1973. It listed H. Fielding as crew leader with a handwritten note for September 14th. Shift ends 22 o'clock. Cable removal south gate, all clear. The final words in blue ink were bolder than the rest. Ava flipped the page, noticing a water stain with faintly smudged ink. Under a loop, 2 legible words remained. "Stop, girl." Each piece of evidence was photographed, sealed, and documented on site. As the forensic team searched the backyard shed, they found more old items, coiled electrical wire, a Pioneer Electric uniform hanging on a hook, worn at the shoulders and stained with oil, and a rusted metal toolbox. Inside the uniform's pocket was a folded piece of paper, a 1973 New Mexico State Fair ticket, faded but with the date still legible. No one in Fielding's household had reason to keep such a ticket. As everything was sealed, Swanson approached to read the suspect his rights. "Howard Fielding, you are under arrest for suspected kidnapping and homicide related to the 1973 disappearance of Evelyn Reed. You have the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney, and anything you say may be used against you in court." Fielding looked up, expressionless, and asked only, "You think I still remember that night?" Swanson replied, "We think you never forgot." As handcuffs clicked shut, Fielding didn't resist. He stepped out into the early morning light, desert wind lifting strands of his gray hair. Neighbors gathered across the street, watching silently. In the police van, Ava secured each evidence bag, her eyes fixed on the old map with its red dots. That afternoon, all evidence was transferred to Albuquerque's forensics lab. The necklace was confirmed as silver-nickel alloy, with a break matching the 1973 file's photo. The map was spectroscopically analyzed to clarify faint markings, revealing a penciled note, "Area marked, check again." Under a microscope, technicians found red soil stains on the paper's edge, with minerals matching Route 66. At the station, Howard Fielding was held in Interrogation Room 3. He sat upright, hands clasped, eyes tired but unafraid. Swanson and the district attorney took turns questioning him about September 14th, his shift, his departure from Pioneer Electric weeks later, the red dots on the map. Fielding answered curtly, "I don't remember." When Swanson showed the restored Polaroid, he stared, eyes narrowing, then said, "Someone took a picture of me. Everyone wore those uniforms back then." After over 2 hours, he remained silent. Swanson ended the session, meeting Ava in the hallway. She held the preliminary lab results, her face tense. "The necklace matches the old photo exactly." "No doubt." Swanson nodded, voice heavy. "We still don't have a body. He knows that, so he's staying quiet." That night, Corrales' holding cell was silent. Yellow light illuminated Fielding's aged, calm face. He sat motionless, staring at his hands. Outside, Swanson leaned against a wall, reviewing the evidence log. Silver necklace, Route 66 map, fare shift logbook. Each line was a final piece bridging a 30-year gap. At 11 p.m., he closed the file, saying softly to Ava, "Tomorrow we start formal interrogation." 30 years of waiting. Now it's time for Evelyn to have her say. Outside, winter winds swept through Corrales, carrying red dust. In the sealed house, the Route 66 map remained on the table, red dots staining the road like old, dried blood time couldn't erase. In the southern holding cell, the man once in a Pioneer Electric uniform sat quietly, eyes distant, awaiting questions he'd dodged for 30 years. Howard Fielding's interrogation began at 8 a.m. on January 16, 2002, in Albuquerque Police Department's Room 3. The small, gray-walled room held a metal table, 2 chairs, and a recorder between them. Chief Greg Swanson, joined by the district attorney and a behavioral psychologist, led the session. Fielding entered in an orange jumpsuit, collar creased, hands slightly trembling. He stayed silent as Swanson reread his rights. The recorder clicked on, its first sound stark, time 8:03 a.m., January 16, 2002. Interrogation of Howard Fielding begins. For the first hours, he stuck to denial. "I've said it," Fielding repeated. "I didn't know that girl. I did my job at the fair and went home." Swanson calmly laid out evidence photos. The silver necklace, Route 66 map, shift log, restored Polaroid. Fielding eyed each, lips pursed, eyes sunken. On the Polaroid, he said tersely, "Everyone wore those uniforms. Could be anyone." After 4 hours, they paused briefly. Fielding sipped coffee, staring distantly. Resuming, Swanson shifted tactics, pointing to the red circle on the Route 66 map found in his home. "This is your mark, pole 217. Why circle that spot?" Fielding shrugged. "I worked that route, maybe marked it to remember." 30 years, nobody recalls. Swanson didn't reply, sliding over the soil analysis report, matching dirt from his home to the crime scene. He said low, "Soil doesn't lie, Howard." By early afternoon, Ava Moreno was called in as a technical witness. She brought an enlarged Polaroid, its highlights enhanced, showing the uniform and Pioneer Electric logo clearly. Placing it before Fielding, she said softly, "This was taken with the victim's camera. You were the last person she saw that night." Fielding stared long, then looked up, voice hoarse. "You don't understand. I didn't do anything to her. I just wanted to talk." Swanson seized the moment, voice low. "Then tell us exactly what happened." Fielding went silent for nearly a minute, then leaned back. He spoke slowly, evenly, like reciting a memory. "That night, I left the fair early. I saw the girl at the gas station. She looked young, familiar. I just asked her something, said I worked the south lights, checking if the cables were off. She smiled, said she had to go. I wanted to keep her talking, ask for directions. He paused, staring at the table, hands clasped. She pulled away, said let me go. I grabbed her arm, just for a second, but she lost balance, fell on the sand by the road. I called out, no answer. When I got closer, she wasn't moving. The room fell silent. The stenographer quietly pressed the record button. Fielding continued. I was scared. I thought if I called the police, they'd say I attacked her. I panicked. I carried her off the road. Near pole 217, there was an abandoned lot where I'd set up a temporary station. I dug a shallow hole with a shovel in my truck. I didn't know what else to do, Swanson asked. Do you remember the exact spot? Fielding sighed, voice fading. South of Route 66, about 40 meters from pole 217, near a flat rock. I buried her there, covered it with sand. I thought the wind would erase it. He stopped, eyes closed, a bead of sweat rolling down his cheek. Then I drove off. I went back a few times, just to make sure no one found it. The air grew thick. Swanson closed his notebook, signaling a pause in recording. When the machine stopped, he said slowly, You just admitted to concealing a body. Do you understand what that means? Fielding nodded faintly, shoulders trembling. I didn't mean to kill her. I just didn't know what to do when it happened. The interrogation lasted over 10 hours. Every detail was recorded on tape and in official notes. Fielding signed the final page, his handwriting shaky, in the location of concealment. Field, he added, south of Route 66, near power pole 217. At 7:45 p.m., Swanson left the room, taking the transcript to the command office. He read the final part, voice rough. He admitted burying the body in an abandoned lot near pole 217, south of Route 66. The words silenced the room. Ava stood by the door, clutching the file, feeling time freeze. Swanson signed an urgent memo. Request immediate site lockdown and excavation warrant. A joint team of state police, forensics, and the DA's office mobilized that night. By 9 p.m., the specified area was cordoned with yellow tape, portable floodlights illuminating the dark sand. In the holding cell, Howard Fielding sat quietly, hallway light casting onto his gaunt face. As a guard passed, he whispered, If they find the right spot, bring her home. Outside, Swanson watched specialized vehicles head to Route 66, night winds swirling sand in the beams. He closed his notebook, voice low, almost to himself, 30 years, and finally, the ground will speak. At noon, on January 17, 2002, desert winds swept the empty lot south of Route 66, stirring red dust into long, faint streaks. The area around pole 217 was tightly secured, yellow tape barring entry. New Mexico's state forensics team and Albuquerque's cold case unit began excavation. 12 personnel in white hazmat suits, masked and gloved, worked silently under pale sunlight. At the site's edge, Lieutenant Greg Swanson observed, noting in his log, while Ava Moreno coordinated ground-penetrating radar and cameras. The area was marked per Fielding's statement, south of Route 66, about 40 meters from pole 217, near a flat rock. The soil was dry, layered with sand and rock fragments, mixed with white pebbles. Ava used a laser measure to set a 10-meter radius around the suspected spot. Technicians cordoned it, erecting a temporary tent for shade and setting up lights for potential night work. At 12:45, the radar detected an anomaly at 38 inches deep, a concave shape with density distinct from the natural ground, typical of an old burial. This is it, a technician said softly. Swanson signaled the forensics team to dig cautiously, layer by layer. Each inch of soil was scooped, sifted through mesh, and separated. After nearly an hour, a shovel hit something hard. Sand was brushed away, revealing a gray-brown human bone, fragile and dry. The team stopped. Ava knelt by the pit, eyes fixed on the first bones. She whispered, voice catching. "They've found her." The remaining skeleton was carefully unearthed. 20 minutes later, a clear form emerged. A young female, lying on her side, hands near her abdomen. A tattered beige fabric wrapped her right wrist, identifiable as Pioneer Electric's technical uniform material. Around the neck were traces of a thin metal clasp, possibly from a necklace. Nearby was an old white canvas shoe, worn sole, common in the early 1970s. Swanson stood silently by the pit, eyes lost in time. He opened his notebook, writing 1352, human remains, female, location, confirmed per suspect statement. A technician tagged each item, coded, and photographed the scene. Each bone was bagged, sealed, and sent to Santa Fe's forensics lab. That afternoon, Ava and Swanson followed the evidence transport from Route 66. Neither spoke. Sand blurred the windshield, the setting sun, casting a golden desert glow, echoing the evening Evelyn vanished in 1973. Swanson said softly, "If it's her, this case closes," but no one's relieved. At New Mexico's State Forensics Center, Dr. Karen Doyle, an anthropologist, led the analysis. Measuring the bones, she noted, female aged approximately 18 to 20 at death, height 5'4", fully consistent with Evelyn Reed's file. The beige fabric was sampled, examined microscopically, confirming cotton synthetic blend, industrial weave used in 1972, 1974. Pioneer Electric uniforms. 3 days later, the DNA lab completed initial extraction from pelvic bone and canine tooth. Samples were sent to Santa Fe's Central DNA Lab to compare with Mrs. Helen Reed's hair, stored since 1974, in a refrigerated unit. Sequencing took nearly 48 hours. Ava and Swanson waited 2 nights at the office. On January 21st, as morning light spilled through the window, the official report hit Swanson's email. The bold subject read, "DNA comparison result, Case Reed." He opened it, reading silently. 99.8% match between remains and Helen Reed's hair sample. Random match probability, below 1/100,000th. Conclusion, mother-daughter relation. Subject identified as Evelyn Reed, female, born 1954. Swanson leaned back, exhaling, eyes briefly closed. Ava, clutching the report, said, 30 years, and she finally has her name. At noon, an emergency meeting convened at the cold case unit. On a large screen, scene photos, maps, and forensic images were displayed. The State Forensics Office's official conclusion was read aloud. Remains excavated January 17, 2002, south of Route 66, approximately 40 m. from pole 217. Belonged to victim Evelyn Reed, missing since 1973. Basis, anthropological comparison. Evidence consistent with case file and 99.8% DNA match probability. Cause of death, undetermined due to prolonged decomposition, but wrist marks and bone structure suggest possible fall and external force. The file was sent to New Mexico's DA office. A prosecution memo recommended charging Howard Fielding with kidnapping, resulting in death and concealment of a corpse, based on his statement, evidence and forensics. That afternoon, Swanson personally delivered the report to Evelyn's mother, Helen Reed, now 80, in Santa Fe. Her small Canyon Road home was quiet, walls lined with old photos. As Swanson handed her the confirmation, her trembling hands opened it. The line, identified as Evelyn Reed, brought tears to her aged eyes. She whispered, "I knew she was still out there. I didn't think I'd live to see this day." As Swanson left, afternoon light bathed the street. He paused at the doorstep, holding Evelyn's old photo, smiling by her Plymouth. "Folding it," he said softly, "like a vow. We brought her home, ma'am." That evening, at the evidence room, Ava cataloged photos of the necklace, fabric, and confirmed remains. Under each, she wrote, "Recovered and identified, Evelyn Reed, 1973, 2002. She turned off the light, standing in the glow from the archive room's glass door, where the cold case #7341 closed file was sealed. Outside, desert night fell on Route 66. Winds swept old utility poles, their faint hum like breaths, like the call of someone who slept 30 years under sand, now found, and named again, Evelyn Reed. Howard Fielding's trial began October 14, 2002, at Bernalillo County Courthouse, Albuquerque. Nearly 30 years after Evelyn Reed's disappearance, the courtroom brimmed with reporters, locals and faces aged by decades of awaiting truth. Under white lights, Fielding sat in the defendant's row, orange jumpsuit neat, face gaunt, eyes calm, yet unreadable. Judge Eleanor Webb presided, with a 12-person jury. New Mexico's prosecutor, David Merrill, a veteran of cold case trials, led the prosecution. The defense was Frank Daly, court-appointed. The room's air was cold and tense, every breath caught between truth and guilt. Merrill opened, "This is not just a murder case, but 30 years of silence. One man carried that secret for 3 decades, leaving a 19-year-old girl under sand, unknown to all." He held up the Polaroid, Fielding in a Pioneer Electric uniform, enlarged on screen. "This is the start. From here every piece of evidence connects, thread by thread, until we found Evelyn Reed, and stand here today." The prosecution presented the evidence chain, the red-marked Route 66 map, silver necklace, Pioneer Electric logbook, soil analysis, beige fabric matching the uniform, Fielding's statement, and the DNA confirming the victim's identity. They detailed his repeated visits to Route 66, soil in his trash, matching the burial site, and the Ford F-250, carrying dust from that region. The first witness, Ava Moreno, was called to testify. She recounted the Polaroid restoration process. The initial blurry image showed a man in a uniform. When digitally enhanced, the Pioneer Electric logo became clear. From there, we identified the man as Howard Fielding, present at the scene the night Evelyn disappeared. Merrill held up the photo to the jury, his voice deliberate. 30 years ago, just a blurry picture. Now technology has forced the past to speak. Next, forensic expert Dr. Karen Doyle testified. Based on bone structure and body position, the victim fell with significant impact, fracturing her right shoulder and wrist, indicating a defensive reflex. No signs of direct weapon-based violence, but the impact led to asphyxiation or severe trauma. She pointed to a 3D model of the scene. If this was an accident, the witness could have called police. Instead, Mr. Fielding chose to conceal. The defense took a different stance. Attorney Frank Daly rose, voice calm. "My client is not a murderer. He was an ordinary technician, haunted by fear and guilt after an accident. Evelyn fell, and he panicked. That's a human reaction, not a premeditated crime." He stressed Fielding's clean record, lack of violent history, and no evidence of planned kidnapping or murder. "We can't call an accident murder just because it was buried too long." The prosecution countered by playing the interrogation recording. Fielding's hoarse, steady voice echoed, "I grabbed her arm, just for a second, then she fell. I buried her near pole 217. Merrill paused the tape, stating, "An accident doesn't need a hidden body. An innocent man doesn't return to that spot for 30 years. Simple fear doesn't mark maps with red circles." On the 4th day, Helen Reed, Evelyn's mother, testified. The room fell silent as she, white-haired, held her daughter's college photo. Her voice trembled. "I just want to know why he didn't speak. If it was an accident, why let me search for 30 years? Fielding bowed his head, shoulders stiff, silent. She looked at him, tears falling, and whispered, "I forgive the accident, but not the silence." The trial spanned over 2 weeks. Each morning, local media reported, and citizens lined up early to attend. Evelyn Reed's story became Albuquerque's focal point, a symbol of cold cases revived by new technology and police persistence. During final arguments, Merrill stood, no notes, voice slow but firm. "We're not here to judge a youthful mistake. We're here to judge 30 years of choosing to hide it." Every day he drove past Route 66. Every weekend he stopped where sand covered her. That's no accident. That's deliberately withholding truth from a family. Attorney Daly countered, there's no evidence of intent to kill. He confessed and cooperated. That's an old man's admission, not a cold-blooded killer's. After nearly 8 hours of deliberation, on October 28th evening, the jury returned. Judge Webb asked the foreman, has the jury reached a verdict? Yes, Your Honor. The clerk read the conclusion. For second-degree murder, the jury is not unanimous. However, for negligent homicide and concealment of a body, the jury unanimously finds guilty. The room fell heavily silent. Fielding sat motionless, hands clasped. Swanson, in the prosecution's row, bowed his head slightly. Helen Reed sobbed, clutching her daughter's photo. Judge Webb delivered the sentence. Given the severity of the actions and duration of concealment, the court sentences defendant Howard Fielding to 35 years imprisonment, without early parole. Sentence begins October 14, 2002. She struck the gavel. The sharp metallic sound rang like a period to 30 years of silence. Fielding turned, scanning the room one last time. His eyes met Ava, who restored the Polaroid. He whispered, I didn't mean to do it. I just didn't know how to fix it. She didn't respond, watching him pass the guards, cuffs glinting in the light. The press dubbed it New Mexico's most memorable cold case. Local TV replayed 1973 news clips, blurry photos, alongside 2002 excavation images. On Route 66, University of New Mexico students erected a small wooden sign, in memory of Evelyn Reed, 1954-1973. Finally found, finally home. In the final ruling, Judge Webb wrote, no justice is perfect, but the truth has finally been returned to the one beneath the sand. That night in Corrales, desert winds swept old utility poles. In the distance, state prison lights flickered. Howard Fielding began his 35-year sentence, a duration long enough to hear, in silence, the echoes of Route 66, where 30 years ago he buried a life. Evelyn Reed's story is not just a case closed after 3 decades, but a reflection of core American values: justice, faith in truth, and technology's power when used rightly. From 1973's investigative flaws, mislogged evidence, unprotected scenes, to the relentless efforts of later investigators like Ava Moreno and Greg Swanson, it reminds us that justice may come late, but never vanishes if pursued. In today's America, where trust in institutions often wavers, Evelyn Reed's case shows transparency, science, and professional duty remain the justice system's bedrock. The Polaroid restoration and DNA testing, pivotal to the case, highlight a truth: technological advances matter only when paired with ethics and humanity. No software alone delivers justice. People wield those tools, believing truth is worth finding. For individuals, Evelyn Reed's story urges us not to overlook the seemingly trivial, as forgotten details often hold keys to greater truths. In a fast-paced, forgetful modern world, this lesson resonates: be patient, honest, and don't let silence abet mistakes. If you believe truth, however long buried, deserves to be found, subscribe to our channel to join us in exploring cases that slept in darkness. Thank you for following Evelyn Reed's story. See you in the next video, where justice awakens again.